Welcome to the Becoming Ageless podcast, where we engage in extended conversations to promote a youthful biological age and improved health span. I'm your host, Robynn and Fredericks, holistic and integrative health practitioner. Welcome to the show, you guys. Today, we are covering a subject that's often ignored at medical circles and has such a deep impact on our health. We're talking about self-awareness and lifespan and longevity. I feel so very fortunate to be able to do this podcast and to meet even just a few of the amazing and beautiful minds of our day. And it's through these conversations that I truly learn the most important information and become inspired in myself to live my chosen lifestyle, which is to uncover a healthy lifespan. Today's interview is no exception, and it's with a special friend that I get to chat with, Tanya Walker, who is a beautiful, beautiful friend. She's also an integrative practitioner specializing in somatic therapy and chronic pain symptoms. Her aim is to guide individuals through emotional challenges and heal inner wounds while promoting overall wellness. She has many years of experience hosting workshops and retreats, especially in Costa Rica, where she has her own business retreat, as well as engaging in person and online coaching, focusing on cultivating deepened self awareness as a primary tool for positive change. It was through her own journey of experiencing a severe fall that left her spending most of her days in bed. And we will be covering this in the interview. But she suffered from anxiety, pain, and depression. And it's because of this that she came to truly understand the concept of being broken and a fear of uncertainty. We've all been there. During this time and during the years that followed of education, Tanya developed her own methodology and has been helping others to achieve their goals. Her supportive approach helps individuals tackle anxiety, insecurities, and overwhelm while supporting healthy shifts, personal growth, and healing. I hope that you'll take time to really listen to this conversation and take all or even just one tip and learn the importance of what true self love is to you and to your entire cellular network. It's important, you guys. Enjoy the show. And we are here now with Tanya Walker. Welcome, my friend.
Hello.
Hello. It's so good to see you.
As always.
I know. For you guys who don't know, Tanya has become a dear friend of mine through Instagram. And we connected, I don't know how many years ago now. A while.
Yeah, I'd say at least 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she is as beautiful of a soul live and in person as she is online. She's a pretty amazing chick. I like her. So yes, Girl Crush Wednesday. She is.
Back at you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to be talking today a little bit about self-awareness and how self-awareness lines up with our longevity and really our health span, because we're more about staying alive rather than we are not dying. So I want to stay alive and stay healthy and vibrant and passionate for as long as humanly possible. And that's what Tony's going to help us out with a little bit. And I'm so excited for you to be here to talk about this. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about what you do in your practice.
Okay. So I primarily teach self-awareness. I help women step into their feminine empowerment, personal power, overcome emotionally challenging obstacles, no matter what that looks like, achieve their goals, and really understand themselves on a deeper level so that they can navigate, I would say, life's choppy waters a lot easier, because no matter what, we're always going to be thrown a curveball.
Right.
And with that, step into their confidence and articulate themselves in a much healthier and better way, which in turn helps with longevity and becoming ageless.
I like that. And this is for men too, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. For men as well. Yes. I work with women, men. I work with couples.
Do I remember correctly that your husband was once upon a time a client?
No,
No?
not my
Okay.
husband.
Maybe it was just because you guys have so many conversations, and I just assume everybody in your life is a client.
I coach him a lot. Make no
Okay.
mistake there. I
Okay.
coach him a lot. And it did kind of, our relationship did kind of begin that way 4 years ago when I was living in Costa Rica and he was in the United States. So yeah, maybe in a roundabout way.
I think we all coach our husbands, and I think they probably coach us back. No doubt there. Okay, so you got into this mainly because of something that happened to you drastic a long while ago. Can you tell us?
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I would say about 20 years ago now, I sustained a fall through vanity. I was getting my eyebrows waxed, and when I laid on the table, the table dropped below my shoulder blades, and I hit my head and my upper back, and I spent a large part of 4+ years in bed in chronic pain and depression, and my whole life had literally like turned upside down. And I won't get into all the nitty gritty, but a large part of what hindered me from getting better was my resistance, my anger, my frustration. I was just putting more stress on my body. And everything just, as you know, organically just evolved. And I started diving into this self awareness thing and learning more about myself because basically I was spending a lot of time laying in bed and my thoughts were running amok in my head. And I started to really examine myself.
Mhm.
And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because there were some shadow parts of myself that I tried to hide from the world that I never wanted to acknowledge. And it was through understanding myself that I was able to like shed a lot of layers and a lot of weight off my shoulders and step into my own feminine power, my own personal power. And it was a process.
Right.
It didn't just happen overnight. It was
Right.
a process of just putting one foot in front of the other and continuing the journey. And the further along I got, the better I felt. And everything else just started to like click and work. And then there was just no stopping because it just felt so good and so many good things were being brought to me. And that's literally how I ended up in the coaching and health and wellness industry.
Yeah. I think most of us get there kind of, something has happened to us and we start searching for our own answers. And I think that's how a lot of us have gotten to where we are.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important that we ask ourselves questions. We're typically not taught. I was never taught by my mom or dad to ask myself questions. I
Yeah.
was just taught on focusing on the external
Right.
and not really understanding how valuable and how powerful the internal is,
And it's
right?
pretty
That's our path to
crazy.
success.
It really is. And that kind of leads us into, the big subject of the day. And your main purpose of your practice is, self awareness. And of course, getting ready for this, you guys, I do my homework. Um, I'm so much into health span and living a long life. So I wanted to look at what is the number one personality trait of somebody who is leading that long life. And do you know what
Right.
it was? It was conscientiousness and
Interest.
self-awareness. I found that like totally interesting. The number one predictor of longevity, of living a long life is conscientiousness. Can you talk to us just a smidge, a little bit about that? Because I know it's this big, huge, deep subject, but I think we should really touch on that. Maybe we can start with that.
Sure.
What is, in your opinion, conscientiousness?
Yeah. So for someone to be conscientious, they have to have some values in place, first of all. And within that value is hardworking. Someone who's conscientious is hardworking. This person is organized. They're detail oriented. They're planners. They have this natural tendency of to be responsible, right? They're the person you want on your team. They're the person I want on my team, particularly in the workplace,
Mhm,
um, in friendships. I think this person also tends to adhere to norms and rules. I
mhm.
think sometimes it can be a catch 22. I think sometimes it can be a catch 22.
Yeah.
We only recognize that catch 22 when we've dived into self awareness, because a lot of conscientious people will see themselves as being conscientious and pride themselves on that
Right.
and define themselves by that. But that's not who they are. And sometimes we become conscientious because of our childhood, and we found coping mechanisms that maybe pushed us toward perfectionism,
Right.
right? And so we didn't really get to understand who we were. We were just navigated in that direction.
Right. So it's almost like there is a difference between being truly conscientious and who you are and having a learned conscientiousness. If I'm saying that right, conscientiousness. Oh my gosh, like 3 times fast, right? But having that learned, like here are the words that I need to have in my life, and I'm going to learn how to be this and do this, and I'm just going to smile, and I'm going to
Right.
be this conscientious person, as opposed to somebody who truly just is because they have learned self-awareness. Um,
I think it's a fine line between being conscientious and conscious,
there you go.
right?
Yes.
Because I'm conscientious in the fact that I'm hardworking and I'm honest and I possess these values and I'm responsible, but I'm also not going to put myself in a detriment
Right.
to be fully responsible if I'm feeling tired or unwell or something doesn't sit right with me. I'm going to make sure that my needs are also met and I'm living in accordance with my values,
Mhm.
right? Not at the expense of myself.
Right. So it's kind of the art of learning to say no, but not at the cost of everything else around you. Sometimes we do have to say yes, but we have to know when to say no without, being told, oh, you should say no to everything.
Yeah, and I think
It's a
that's a
really
really
weird place.
yeah, and that's a really difficult thing for so many. I mean, I grew up where I was just always told to be the good girl and do the right thing and follow the values of my parents, which, instilled great values, but in the end, they really didn't, some of them didn't end up being my top values. They belonged to somebody else. And
Right.
through conditioning, they became mine until I dove into self-awareness and recognized like, this really isn't working for me,
Yeah. Right.
you know?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, there's so many levels and layers to this. Can we talk a little bit about, I know that we're very much on the same page with, our bodies are 3 parts. We have to learn to nurture each part. We're not a part on its own.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about self-awareness with the spirit, with the soul, with the body. And how do we navigate this and how do we do it? What do we need to do? How do we get out of our own head? How do we become more the person that we need to be to start expanding our wellness and our longevity?
Well, I want to thank you for asking me that question because I was hoping you were going to ask me that question because this is pretty much the foundation of my whole coaching practice and how I choose to live. And so I feel that the pillars of who we are the mind, the body, and the spirit. And we have to through self-awareness take a look at our mind. What are my thoughts? What's the repetitive thought that goes through my head that I'm really not paying attention to? I mean, we have, 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90 to 95% of those thoughts are negative, and 80% of those thoughts are based on worry. So we're spending a really large part of our time in a negative energetic space, first of all, that affects our physiology and our longevity, right?
Right.
So if we can look at our thoughts, where am I judgmental? Where do I self-sabotage? Where are my fears? Where are my insecurities? Because all of these are thoughts.
Right.
Everything is in our brain. And we have the power to change our brain through neuroplasticity. We can use mantras and affirmations and all sorts of really fabulous tools out there. We can work with someone and to really change our brain. But self-awareness all begins up here. This is it. And the second one is the body. And the physiology, 100%, cellular function, all of that. But also, let's not forget the emotional body. The emotional body resides in the physical body, and it's energy. If we think of emotion, you've heard this before, emotion, energy in motion. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And our emotions, they affect our nervous system, whether most of us, I would say that I encounter, and myself as well, have lived most of my life in survival mode
Yeah.
and difficult to transition into parasympathetic of rest and digest. So understanding just that is powerful.
Yes.
And understanding where emotions lodge themselves, where that energy goes, like the anger attaches to the liver, the grief and sadness attached to the lungs, the fear attaches to the kidneys. And so this gives us a whole wealth of information to understanding ourselves and our health.
Yeah.
And then the third one, as you mentioned, is one of my favorites is the spirit, because that's our ability to connect to our higher self, to a higher power, whatever that looks like for somebody, um, and really see, how am I operating? Am I coming from a place of integrity? Am I coming from a place of patience? Am I coming from a place of compassion? Let me tell you, compassion is not always easy,
Yeah.
right? It's not always easy, but instead of looking at somebody through this lens of anger and resentment and frustration, maybe we can shift the lens to looking at someone. I always tell my clients, when you're really angry at someone, make that person 10 years old and look at that person. And now you have maybe a better understanding of their environment growing up and their conditioning and the coping mechanisms that they developed to survive, that they evolved into this adult person.
Right.
And that helps us forgive much, much easier, and allows us to fill with gratitude. So I think the mind, body, spirit is really, really powerful, and all of it should be touched upon, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It definitely should be. You've touched on a couple of different things, and we're going to eventually get into talking a little bit about how someone can tap into their own self-awareness now to develop that. But can you talk a little bit about trauma that people have experienced in their earlier days and their earlier lives, and maybe they're holding on to it, and maybe they've put it like in a cabinet back behind them somewhere,
Mhm.
closed off and compartmentalized, but it's still there. It's like you said, it's holding on to the liver, the lungs, wherever, and we don't even realize it, but it's beginning to come across. And it does become part of who you are and the way that you behave, especially towards others and even towards yourself.
100%. 100%. I think if I was to look back at my journey, when they say that your most challenging time can bring you your greatest gift if you're open to it. And let me tell you, I was really angry all that time laying in bed. I was
Uh-huh.
really, really angry and
Uh-huh.
frustrated and very resentful. Not so proud to admit, but true. And what that gave me is that gave me insight into myself. And I think that we, Robin, I just drew a blank. Can you tell me the question again? I got so
Can I
caught up
remember
in
the
you. I
question
just going,
again?
yeah,
Yeah, well,
well, you know what? And that's the injury too that comes back to me is
yeah.
I have some memory issues.
And that's, the fact that you actually acknowledge that, and that's fine and great. And I can certainly understand that. But in dealing with like trauma and somebody having something deep inside of them that they need to like, it's expressing itself without them even realizing it. How do we tap into that trauma? How do we get rid of that trauma? Acknowledge the trauma, I guess, and then get rid of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've yet to meet someone who doesn't have some form of trauma in their body. We've all had traumatic experiences, no matter what that looks like. Maybe you were singled out in your class in grade 4. That was traumatic. Um, Developmental trauma, I see a lot of that. That's huge for a lot of people. And make no mistake, I'm not a psychologist and I don't, you know, pretend to be, but just living in a family where there's a lot of bickering,
Mhm.
that's that's traumatic for a child. And remember that trauma is not the incident. There's a traumatic incident or traumatic situation, traumatic experience, but trauma is what lives in the body.
Right.
It's not that I had trauma. No, I experienced a traumatic incident and that trauma is now inside me. And so when we're when we haven't been taught healthy coping mechanisms or we haven't had emotional safety or when we've just been told what to do, and it's never about throwing, your parents or your family under the bus, but we all come from somewhere. I mean, let's be real, right? And it's recognizing that, it's acknowledging, what did I grow up in? How did it affect me? And where am I bringing that
Mhm.
into my adult life? Because for me, if you would have asked me 15 years ago, I would have said my life was a storybook. It was a fairy tale. It was perfect. I totally have everything together. I'm super conscious. I'm a great friend. And then I started really looking at things.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, things really weren't so perfect and they affected me this way. And I became a serial people pleaser. And I had all these deep seated insecurities that stopped me from pursuing an academic career because I didn't think that I was smart enough. And I didn't know how to speak my truth. I love my mom, but my mom was very passive.
Mhm.
So I took on that role. And I faked my way through a lot of stuff, but the trauma was inside me and I could feel it because I always had a sick stomach. I just I just had these, physical issues.
Right.
And so understanding that now gives me a foundation for change. So how did I heal that? How do I see people healing that? I think I think talk dialogue is really, really helpful,
Mhm.
but it doesn't remove the trauma from the body.
Right.
And we have to remove that energy from the body. So, I'm a hands-on somatic practitioner.
Right.
And so that's one way that you can remove the trauma is by, finding someone like that to have that release in safe space where there's love present, where you feel completely secure and know it's confidential. There's breath work is another profound, profound modality
Mhm.
that just can be a cathartic experience. Um, there's movement, sound, um, but just beginning with that inner awareness and tools, because I'm seeing a lot of people reading books, and books are fabulous. There's so much information. But there's so many people that just don't take the tools and put them into action.
Right. And
And
there's
a
a
lot
lot of
of time,
information out there too that you can't always trust.
100%. I agree with you 100%. But giving someone a tool and saying, okay, this is your homework this week, that's really scary. Not everybody wants to have that conversation that they've dreamt of for 5 years and that's been keeping them awake, right? So whatever that looks like, we have to make sure that we have the willingness, but we also take the actions.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. So if a person is dealing with some kind of trauma in their past and they're kind of holding it in, it's good for them to first recognize it, because I guess recognizing it is like you're opening up that cabinet and you're saying you need to come out into the lights. And I think that's probably the number one step. Am I right?
You know, I'm in alignment with you on that. I always said, I get people say, I'm really afraid to open that can of worms. I'm like, you know what? Those worms need to go back to Mother Earth.
Yes.
Like don't be afraid of yourself, but in the same light, choose the right people to help you navigate that.
Right.
You
Right.
don't need to go on that journey alone because it can be really scary.
I
There's
can.
so much that comes up. And just the smallest trigger, you might think you're okay. And then you walk into a room somewhere or a building and there's a smell. And now that trigger brings you all the way back to that time.
Mhm.
But it's in that moment, it's recognizing that trigger
Right.
and working through that trigger. And I think we're in a society where we're just in this hustle culture that we're not taking time to sit. And we're so afraid of feeling anything that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But that's a huge part of who we are. That makes us human.
I like that. So, okay, so taking all of that into consideration and moving it into self-awareness, um, we want to become better people, but we're in the age of the internet and social media. We used to complain all the time about magazines and magazines telling us what we should be and how we should look and all this good kind of stuff. Now we have the internet doing that.
Right.
And while they fuss about magazines, they're still doing it themselves. They themselves are doing it. We want to move out of that realm where we're not being governed by a person we don't even know, or maybe we know their face and their name because of pictures. Um, but we don't know anything that's going on in their life yet. We're letting them dictate to us how to live our lives.
Right.
How do you, in the age of self awareness, how do we learn who to listen to? I mean, I don't even know if you have an answer for that.
So that's a that's a really difficult question to answer. But I think that when you start following someone, I always like to look for transparency. I always like to look for the message. I don't care about the pomp and circumstance and how they're dressed and the perfect scenario. And that's not important to me. I want to connect to the real person who's, getting their butt kicked in life because we all get our butt kicked. It doesn't matter, if you're the best coach in the world, you can't stop emotional challenges from rearing its ugly head. But it's how do they navigate through those times?
Right.
I want to learn from someone who's been there, not someone, for me personally, not someone who just got it from a book. I want to connect to humanness, right?
Right.
I mean, that's powerful. I mean, I think that's one of the first things that attracted me to you when, I started following you. It's like you were just doing your thing and putting yourself out there. And it's like, I want some of that.
Yeah.
I want to I want to embody myself in every best way possible and learn from people that are doing the same.
Right. I've learned, through the years, I try to be authentic. I try to put myself out there. You guys all know that I stupidly was texting and walking. We all know about texting and driving, but I was texting and walking and ran into a tree branch. Ended up with a hemorrhagic stroke because of a brain bleed. My cerebellum, right next to my brainstem, I understand, um, hit the back of my skull and it got nicked because the skull is very spiny. Um, but I wanted to be authentic and let people in on that journey a little bit, especially on Facebook, because Facebook's more of my personal page where I
Mm.
just talk personal stuff, not business stuff. But I started finding that there were a lot of people who love drama. They relish the drama. And at the very beginning, it was like, fine, it's like, oh, how are you? And oh my God, and as the months went on, I'm still getting that. And even though I'm like moving on and I'm happy and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, they're like, but you should be dead. You shouldn't even be. It's like I've moved past there. and they want to keep you there because they love that trauma. So
Right.
I started learning how to just kind of dismiss that. And it's like, I don't even talk about, what all's going on anymore because I know that is there. Am
Right.
I blocking anything in myself because I'm not letting them into, I'm not exposing myself to their negativity anymore? Or am I protecting myself or am I blocking myself?
Well, I think you know what it comes down to is that it's your page and you can do anything you want on that page. And if somebody wants to put that comment out, they can put that comment out. You can delete that comment
Mhm.
if you want. You have every right, but I think these people are still following you for a reason, and you hold a lot of power in helping them make shifts, and they might slowly start to shift the more you start to show up in that way, in that authentic way. Because when you're not putting yourself out there fully in the way that you want to, you're only harming yourself and not living in your authentic space.
Right. So in dealing with other people, if they're finding something similar to that, maybe they should turn off comments
A
if they
hundred
don't want
percent.
to deal with that. We're
Yeah,
talking
I say,
about,
you know what?
what other people might be feeling or thinking, and we're getting inundated with everybody's thoughts and feelings. I know for me personally, I've gone through, sorry, you guys, but it's true. I've gone through my Facebook and I've unfollowed. We're still friends, but I unfollowed a lot of people because I don't want to see their post every day. And
That's
sometimes we need to do that.
and it's not to be taken personally.
Mm-mm.
We shouldn't we should not be offended by anybody who does something that is good for them or they feel is good for them. There's no reason to feel offended or rejected.
Yeah.
Listen, when I remember telling my husband, Jeff, I remember the night that I said, "I think I'm falling in love with you." And he looked at me and he said, I had flown from Costa Rica to the United States, and he looked at me and he said, "Okay, um, I'm not ready to respond to that." And I said, "That's fine." I didn't feel rejected at all
Right.
in that moment, not at all. I told myself, in this phase of my life, I am showing up fully in every way, shape, and form. And if I'm not met, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, we all just need to be true to who we are,
Mhm.
provided that we have done that work or have started that work and are, trying to connect to our higher self.
Right.
It's not about saying, yeah, well, you know what, and to you, because this is the way I do it.
Right.
That's coming from a very toxic, energetic space.
Right. And I think that's a dangerous place for us to be at because we're talking about self awareness, and yet we can become, as one person put it once a long time ago in my life, you can become so spiritually minded that you become no earthly good. And we have to find that balance. We have to
Absolutely.
be self aware. We have to not be somebody else's doormats. We have to know who we are, but yet we need to be considerate of other people's feelings and what's going on in their lives because their life is still going on all outside of your own life. And you're not the only one in this universe. It's not all about us. We would like to think that sometimes, but it's not all about us. But in our little realm, it is about us. So, I mean, that's a hard thing to navigate. Can you give any good tips on that?
Yeah, I think when you've clearly defined your values, like really write down on a paper as many values as you can and put them in order
Hmm.
and at least identify your top 5, at least your top 3. And there's a lot of people who say, well, this is my value. For example, my value is respect. Oh, yeah, my value is respect too. But then this person gets angry and calls people names and is judgmental. And like, well, you might want respect is your value. You want respect, but you're not giving it. So to really hold those values is to embody that value. So integrity is one of my top values. Well, I do my best to show up in integrity. I try to live in accordance with that value. So you said, oh, see, I can't even remember the words you used, but anyway, on your Facebook page. And
Being authentic.
sorry?
Being authentic.
Yeah. And so if that's a value, then you continue to be authentic. You don't have to worry about anybody else
Right.
because you know that you're coming from a really lovely place.
And if we're living it, then we start kind of expecting it from others. So it becomes something that's just all around us. Our whole world is kind of about that. And if somebody is not living through an authentic life or a respectful life, we just begin to say, you need to be on the outside. If you want to imagine, like I imagine anyway, like a circle around me. And it's like you can be on the outskirts of that circle, but you're not coming into my inner space. And I still see you, I still respect you, but I'm not gonna let you in.
Right. Because now you have your boundaries. You have your boundaries in place. You know what you will and what you won't accept, what you'll tolerate, what you won't tolerate, because you're confident, because you have self awareness and you've done that work. You're doing that work. You're continuing to evolve. And our values change as we get older, circumstances change, experiences are brought to us, our values change, and that's okay. We're forever growing and learning from those experiences. But I feel that the more self-aware that we become, the more empowered we become because it feels so good. And toxic energy, it's almost like we don't even have to work at it anymore. It just doesn't come to us anymore.
Right.
They're not interested in us anymore.
Yeah. And they're afraid to say anything bad because you're not going to respond in a hateful manner. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a fight. And if you don't respond that way, well, you're no fun to them anymore. So they kind of move on.
Right. Right. I mean, that saying, kill them with kindness. I think when you kill them with, I don't want to say kill them, but when we use authentic kindness, authentic heart-based words with true emotion behind it, because a lot of people can just, spew off verbiage, but they're not really feeling what they're saying.
Right.
And when you have that emotion attached to it, that energy is going out and you're actually sending those people light.
Yeah. I mean, so as a practitioner, and I understand we're neither one of us give medical advice. For me personally, and I know Tanya is the same way. We don't treat disease; we try to help people to be healthy and find balance in life, and that is such a key component to us. But in the terms of health span, creating a health span or a longer, healthy longevity, when we become self-aware, what do you think that is doing to the body, to the physical body, to help us to create a longer health span? Because I have a quote from National Institutes of Health, and you know what? I love when science and your mind, body all kind of come together. And this quote says, negative self perceptions earlier in the adult age span were associated with shorter longevity, and positive self perceptions were associated with longer longevity. I love that. I truly love that. And I have found that in my own journey when, I'm talking to people who have made it to 90 or beyond. And I ask them the questions of, what do you think the number one thing is? And you know what? I mean, as much as I'm into nutrition and everything else, these people are eating everything. I mean, most of them eat a really good diet, but I met a woman who was 103 who was sitting down to a very strong drink and a whole cup of French fries, and she said she had it every single night. But every single one of them always had the same thing that they said. And the number one thing was, I'm happy for tomorrow. I'm excited to be alive right now. I am happy to be me. And that is now being associated with longevity. So, what do you think is actually happening when we're holding on to those emotions? We're not truly letting ourselves be who we are and that self expression. We don't know what our values are. We're just living in this world today because we can do that kind of. We just, we have a false personality online. Um, when we're holding all that stuff in, what do you think that's doing to our bodies?
I think it's disrupting cellular function right there. Your cells aren't vibrating, they're not oscillating at the optimal frequency. I think that it blocks oxygen in the body. Um, I think we get sick, we develop inflammation, we again, a lot of it starts in the brain and our thoughts.
Right.
So, why am I not feeling good about myself? What are
Well,
my stressors? What God, we bring so much stress into our own bodies and lives
yeah.
just by self-perception, just by way of self-perception. And I'm loving lately that another buzzword on social media is self-love,
Yes.
right? Hashtag self-love. Well, that doesn't mean a manicure pedicure. Maybe that's a treat, maybe that's a little indulging, maybe it's self-care, however you want, but that, you know, that falls under the umbrella of self-love. But self-love is more, for me, understanding who am I as a woman? Who am I as a man? How am I showing up for myself? How am I showing up for my loved ones? What energy am I projecting? What's emanating from me in my electromagnetic field? What am I attracting? And really taking a look at all of that. And yeah, like my grandmother lived to 103 and a half. And she was the strongest woman in my life. She sang, she danced, she always had something positive to say. Her cup, I mean, she was born in 1917. She grew up in really impoverished times in Northern Canada.
Yeah.
And her cup was always half full. And she always told me there's nothing that you can't do. And you got to like yourself first.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the message that we need to. I think, people like yourself and myself and anybody out there who's, wants to help others is to empower them
Yeah. I
and
think
to know that they can just, God, they can just climb that mountain and reach the top.
yes. Yes. Plant that flag. I think it's really interesting, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past. You know, we have a nervous system. We have a parasympathetic, a sympathetic, a rest and digest, and a fight or flight. And that cortisol is important to us. We Without cortisol, we wouldn't wake up in the mornings. We would just
Right.
stay long. We need a little bit of cortisol. We need that cortisol to get us online to do these podcasts. That cortisol kind of gives us that energy to go do things. But we don't want to live there because that's when it becomes fight or flight. And it starts really messing with the whole bodily process. And we start creating a chronic state of inflammation. We want more of that rest and digest. We want that parasympathetic side. And I know you deal a lot with that. And with self awareness, I think because the vagus nerve going up and down, from our brain to our nervous system into our stomach, our heart, our lungs, that is really kind of dealing with that whole parasympathetic.
Yeah.
And if we choose to live, when I was 20, I loved the fact that I was a type A personality. I was go, 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 go. And now I'm like, oh, bring it down. Just bring it down. Use it in the right way. Go and jump on that merry-go-round. But, take it that way, not
And
this way.
you know that because of self-awareness.
Yes. Yes. So now how would you suggest somebody learns how to step out of that fight or flights and more into the rest and digest? What are some things that a person could be doing for that's going to help bring them into eventually that self-awareness place?
You know, I I'm an old school gal, so I would say get an old-fashioned pen and paper and write down everything that's on your plate to begin with. What's got you there you go. What's no, right? What's got you so stressed out?
Right.
And what can you take off that plate for one thing? Um, where can you ask for help? And that is a real tough one for us because we want to show everyone that we're everything. We can do it all. We're not intended to do it all. We're intended for community. We're intended for a tribe. We're intended to give and receive. So find someone who can help you. Um, diet, as you know, diet is huge. Take a look at what you're consuming. What are you willing to start with? Where are you going to eliminate? What are you willing to eliminate to start? Baby steps.
Right. Because food alone can cause inflammation in your body, which inflammation is going to create more stress on your body, more cortisol.
Right. And if we have gut dysbiosis, then we're more prone to depression and anxiety and that cortisol is just running amok in our system and
And a shorter lifespan.
physiology is just spiraling downward. So there's so many things that we can do. Hydration, diet, the narrative going through the mind, what's the story that you're telling yourself. Look at things that you can take off your plate. And when someone says, I can't take anything off my plate. Well, you know what? Sometimes it might be that your 3-year-old is not going to go into the dance class.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's something like that. We have to find things because your health, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Right? To you and your family and your friends. Meditation. And then people say, I can't meditate. Well, that's the person who needs to meditate. It's training the brain.
Right.
So I would say if you just can't sit in the quiet, then light a candle.
Right.
Find something. I'm looking at my pendulum right now. Focus on something. Sit in your car and look at the rear view mirror. Just focus on something and breathe and breathe. Most of us are not breathing.
We're not.
Most of us are using, 20 to 25% of lung capacity from here up, and we're not even getting down and really expanding the diaphragm.
Well,
We're belly breathers and we're not expanding the rib cage. So we're just not getting that expansion. So there's a lot of things that we can do,
yeah.
but we have to start.
We have to start. We can just sit around and twiddle our fingers and expect everything to fall in our laps. So self-awareness, conscientiousness is a big part of it. Consciousness is a big part of it. It's bringing us into a place of allowing us to be more tuned into our feelings and
Mhm.
experiences of others. And I really like that because we've talked a little bit about that. And if we're really in tune with ourselves, we are self-aware. We're going to be more aware of what the other person needs. And it's going to be important to us.
Oh, so important.
Yeah.
So important that how can I possibly understand someone else if I don't understand myself? How can I truly give to someone else if I don't know how to give to myself? If I don't know how to receive? So when we have self-awareness and we do that, get into those mucky, murky places, the shadow self, the places that we don't want anybody to know about. And we really acknowledge it and we embrace it and we use the power of vulnerability to accept it. Because listen, we all have it. We all have those places and parts of ourselves. So let's just put the cards on the table right now and say, you know what? Yeah, this is me. Sometimes, I was too gossipy. Sometimes I opened my mouth too fast. Sometimes I didn't think of, the words that I was choosing. I was reacting versus responding. When we go to those places and we recognize it in ourselves, now we have the ability to recognize it in others. And we understand that all of that comes from a wounded place. So now again, we're able to see people in a more human light. And it makes forgiveness much easier. It makes moving on much easier.
Yeah. I think forgiveness is a big part of it. Forgiveness of yourself and of others. And we
Yeah,
have to forgive ourselves. I think that's a big thing. We don't forgive ourselves enough.
you're right. Because we're not checking in with ourselves to
Yeah.
say, hey, just, you know, how many people are looking in the mirror and not liking what they see? And they're like, oh, so they don't look in the mirror anymore.
Right.
They don't say good morning to that person staring back at them and say, you know what, I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job. You're showing up again today. Today's a new day. Maybe it didn't work for you yesterday, but you can start again today.
Right.
So, really loving ourselves is really, really important. And when you're ready to love yourself, you'll be ready to dive into self awareness
Yeah.
because you're fed up of what you've been doing or how you've been living.
Right. I like that. There's a difference between values and goals, correct?
Yes.
So like what a person's self goals, not like, my goals for my business, but our own goals and our own values. What's the difference between the two?
Well, your goals is something, well, first of all, I think we all need goals. All
Mhm.
of us need goals because goals give us purpose.
Right.
And it's our values that drive us to achieve those goals.
Okay.
So if you haven't identified your values, then you're going to have a harder time achieving those goals or maintaining those goals once you've achieved it. Like
Right.
someone who wants to say, I don't want to say like lose weight because I don't want to put emphasis on the external body, but get healthier.
Healthy. Hmm.
Somebody that wants to improve their health. Well, if they don't have their values in place, achieving their health is going to be more difficult because they're going to probably, fall off the bandwagon there.
Right. So what
So
about what about priorities? Where does that fall between goals and values? Is it somewhere in between? Is it one or the other?
think I think our values are first. We have to identify our core values and be really clear about that and not worry what anybody else thinks or what anybody else needs because we're all on this journey separately, right? And together, but it begins with self. So identify the values and set the goal and make the goal a priority.
Yeah.
Make it a priority. Make your health a priority.
Yeah.
Swap out one of the 5 sodas in a day. Go from a teaspoon of sugar to a half a teaspoon of sugar, or better yet, stevia. Just make those conscious decisions
Right. Right.
based on your values.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that. So keeping in the realm of all of this with longevity, healthy lifespan, if somebody wants to move into a place, maybe they feel or they don't know if they're in a place really of being self-aware,
Mhm.
if you could give them one tip, one thing to do, one question,
Hmm.
what would you say it is?
Well, there's a few things that come to mind.
Okay, so a few things.
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to uncover your wounds. Take a look at your fears. Write them down. Journal.
Mhm.
Journal your feelings. Don't be afraid of them.
Right. And that might come to you over days. You might not get them all at once.
Yeah, yeah. And let me tell you, there's a great tool out there. There's a great coaching tool. It's called the Wheel of Emotions.
Okay.
Down, download that. Download that PDF. It's something I use all the time. And it gives us, the 7 core emotions in the center.
Uh-huh.
And, a lot of people are between like, happy, sad, and angry. They don't really think of surprised as one of those, core emotions. And then from there, it's like, okay, I've identified I'm angry. Well, now what is it behind the anger? And what's behind that? And it helps you move outward. So you can really hone in on exactly what you're feeling. And sometimes it shows you where you're operating from. And that's a really great place to help you rise up and make those changes
Mhm.
by just adopting some simple tools. But again, we have to have the awareness, and the awareness is all in here.
Right.
Another one is I would say understand how you're communicating. how are you showing up? Are you showing up by not speaking? Are you afraid of conflict, confrontation? Because some people look at everything as confrontation. Some people think that just by expressing, yeah, thanks, but that doesn't really work for me. Some people think that that is being confrontational with someone else.
Right.
And so we want to show up with an assertive communication, but an assertive communication with compassion and respect. So assertion through the heart space, right? Coming through our spiritual side. And I mean, communication is the number one breakdown in every single relationship, whether it's the workplace, intimacy, friendship, family, it's communication. And so when you understand communication styles and you're able to see where someone else is operating from, and again, it's from that self-awareness.
Yeah.
So you won't get as easily triggered. You'll be able to navigate that conversation and influence outcomes much, much better.
I like that. Yeah, I've always lived by the concept, and it's been written many times, the tongue is the rudder of life. And we can speak things normally because we're thinking things that can direct us, whether we realize it or not. But what we forget is that we can speak things into another person's life without even realizing it and cause them to react to us because maybe they're not in that self-awareness space yet, or they're trying to navigate it too, but we trigger something.
Right.
And if they react, and then now what are we going to do in that space? And a lot of times it's going to really, really play with us and mess us up. I
Mhm.
think that's important, really listen to what those thoughts are in your mind before you open your mouth and allow those words to come out.
Because they're damaging.
Yes.
They're damaging. Words can really, really stick
Yes.
unless you're really strong and you've done that work. And in that case, it would be like, okay, this is how this person shows up. I'm seeing a cycle. I'm not in alignment here.
Yeah.
I see where it comes from. I understand the behavior, but I'm out. And I send love and light, but now I've got my pink sparkly spider web all around me, right? Like
I
Spider-Man.
like it.
Um, and I think, you know, we need to understand our triggers. Why are we operating from that place?
Right.
And if I've triggered somebody, I can't control that. That's out of my control. I'm human. I don't want to use the cop out language like I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm human and I'm showing up in the best way possible that I know how. And I'm
Mhm.
going to continue to learn and grow. Somebody can always approach me and tell me how they feel. I will always apologize. I will show up in the best possible way that I can. I will learn from that situation without guilt or shame.
Mhm.
Um, but I can't control everybody else's triggers.
Right. Very true.
Yeah.
Okay, two last questions for you. These are fun.
Oh
Okay.
boy. Here
These
we
are
go.
fun. I want fast answers. Don't even think about it. What is the first thing you say to yourself when you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror?
Thank you.
I like that.
Thank every morning. Thank you. It's the first thing I say when I know that I'm awake and my eyes are closed. Say thank you. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know that I'm alive.
I like that. And name three things that you do in your own personal life on a regular daily basis to achieve a greater health span.
Breath, because the body needs oxygen to survive. And I want to get into that microcirculation. Breath work every single day. Stretching every single day. And positive self-talk all day long. I'm at the point now where I think I've trained my brain where that's all I do in idle moments is when I'm not meditating or watching TV or reading a book or something, but it's positive talk all the time
I like that.
because there was a time when there was a lot of negative talk and I didn't hear that mental chatter.
Mhm.
But yes, it was there, and it hindered me in life. It stopped me from being who I wanted to be or was meant to be.
Yeah, I can do
Yeah.
that. I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your own personal life, kind of bringing things to a close a little bit, you are a practitioner. You
Mhm.
practice a lot of somatic healing. You do retreats. Um, if a person wants to get in touch with you, what kind of person gets in touch with you, and what kind of things should they be looking for? I mean, obviously, don't approach Tanya if you're looking for, a psychotherapist that you can sit and, get some kind of drugs from, because she's not your person. She is a practitioner, an integrated practitioner who is looking at somatic healing and things of that sort. So tell me about your clients. What kind of clients do you have?
So my clients are the age group I would say would be 25 to 75. I
Okay.
have men and women. I work with couples. I work primarily with emotional challenges, so that is a lot. But the the foundation and the modality is the same. It's the mind, body, spirit modality. So diving into self-awareness first, using simple tools, homework, um, and sometimes there's movement, sometimes there's breath work, sometimes there's meditation. I don't have a set protocol because nobody falls on page 427. Everybody is different. So, because I'm an intuitive coach and an intuitive practitioner, it's more of what I feel you need in that moment. And together we become a team. We become a team, and we come up with a plan for you for whatever that goal is that you're looking to achieve.
Nice. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
They can find me on social media. They can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. They can certainly go to my website, tanyawalkerwellness.com. And
All the links are there.
yeah, and I
And
know
all the links are going to
it's
be in the page notes here too, the show notes here too. So if all else fails, just go to the show notes here, you guys.
yeah.
Yeah. Tanya, thank you so very much. Do you have any parting words for our listeners?
Know your worth.
Stay true to you.
Do 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 the work,
Yeah.
and don't leave your life up to fate. Do the work. You have more control than you think.
Yeah. It's worth it. You're worth it.
Yeah,
The ultimate self love, self awareness.
absolutely.
I just came up with a new tagline.
I love it. I'm stealing it.
Awesome, girl. Thank you so very much for being on.
Thanks, Robyn. Love you.
I love you, and all those notes or all the links are going to be in the show notes and the little column below. Thanks, you guys. I so hope you enjoyed this conversation with integrative practitioner and friend Tanya Walker about the value of self-awareness and achieving emotional resilience and well-being. This is such an important subject. Many people, many in the medical field and friends alike, they just don't even know how important it is, or maybe they just don't want to know how important it is or how to even access it. Tanya emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and shares tips for achieving it, focusing on the mind, body, and spirit. After all, it's not just a hot bubble bath, you guys. After listening to this, I hope that you're able to explore the impact of self-perception on longevity and take advantage of the practical advice for improving our own self-awareness and achieving greater health span. After all, we are our own best health advocate. Thanks so much for joining us today, you guys, and stay tuned for our next episode, where we will introduce another motivational figure and influencer who turned ill health in midlife into a thriving following, all by making her health a priority. Thanks, you guys. Stay ageless.